We're more looking at it from a contrarian perspective for family office capital,
Right.
right? So we have the optionality to be contrarian.
Exactly. This is the lowest ROI market I've ever seen
Yeah.
in terms of renovations and sort of adding washer dryers. Like, man, the ROIs are not there.
We're not necessarily trying to hit the home run. We more like to feel, okay, rent growth is coming. We kind of feel it. And then, we might hit a double, right? Or we might hit a triple. We don't want to be the first in to hit the home run. No one really wants to admit it, right?
Yeah.
And lenders don't want to let it go.
People are underwater.
People
it is
are
what
underwater,
it is.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's impossible to not be underwater when you go that aggressive. PARES AI is an AI-enabled multifamily underwriting software. I was underwriting so much and not closing much. And so I built this thing where I can basically wake up every morning and then I put my stuff into PARES and then it'll basically tell me whether it passed or not.
Yeah.
Right? And then I only look at the deals that pass. How can I make an acquisition person think better or think smarter about a certain deal? That's what we're really trying to go for. And I think that's really the power of AI today.
Welcome to another episode of Deal Flow Friday. I'm your host, David Moghavem, and today we got Zihao Wang. Zihao, how you doing?
Good.
Fresh from a flight from LA to Miami.
Yeah, I'm
fresh from a red eye.
Yeah.
I don't know how you have the energy to drop on a pod, but I really appreciate it.
No, I really wanted to be here and do the pod in person.
Yeah, no, it's way better in person.
100%.
And I think it's a little bit better in Miami than LA. I mean, the weather here this time of year, you can't
view
beat it.
For sure,
Yeah, the view, the weather. You came in at a cloudy time, but the vibrancy here. So it's good that we got you in the Miami office to talk shop. For those of you who don't know Zihao's working on something extremely special. He's working on a company called PARES AI. What does it stand for again?
Palo Alto Real Estate Software.
Yeah, and it's a AI co-pilot built specifically for commercial real estate brokers and investors to make their underwriting workflows more efficient. And we'll dive more into that. Zihao also has a really special story. MIT dropout. I mean, if you really want to get the story, you got to listen. Shout out to Taylor Vakian's pod. That was a really good one. But MIT dropout built an incredible portfolio with your family. And knows a lot about the market, knows a lot about his hometown in LA, Pasadena, but also looking to expand. So I'd love to also get your market takes as well, which we'll dive into. But Zihao, amazing having you on.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited.
So what brought you to Miami, first of all?
So the Florida Multifamily Summit, right? We're obviously trying to expand into the Southeast.
Yep.
So always exploring the area, but also talking to operators that are local here to get a gauge of what they're looking at and what their investment thesis is and see if we can align with them and, do joint ventures and partner up.
How was it overall, the conference? It was a good takeaways. What were some key takeaways from the conference that really resonated with you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same as the, last 2 years where the market is still slow, right?
Yep.
Rent growth isn't evident yet, right? And there's supply side pressure, and then obviously affordability is kind of the demand driving factors, right? And more people are just still in the play of newer vintage, trying to buy at really good basis and elongating their hold period and really going for the long game instead of a 2-3 year flip, which was the play in 2019, 2020.
Yeah, get in. It was hot potato. Pre-rate hike.
Yeah.
Get in, get out, bridge debt. Now everyone's look at this basis relative to historical, buying below replacement costs.
Yeah.
Back to the basics, cash flow. So are you kind of following the same trend, or are you kind of zagging where everyone's zigging? Because I think what I'm finding is everyone wants the 90s and newer, and it just gets way too competitive.
Yeah.
And I know you have some older vintage assets in your own portfolio. So how are you looking at that? Are you looking at it in a contrarian standpoint, or are you kind of agreeing or going with the tide in that regard?
So we're more looking at it from a contrarian perspective. A few reasons for that. One is we're family office capital, right? So we have the optionality to be contrarian.
Exactly.
Also newer vintage, when everybody is kind of flying towards quality, your rates get compressed, right? And so I guess the yields isn't as good as they were when the first people were flocking towards quality, right?
Right.
And then also we're very used to older vintage, right? California, things don't age as much because you can't build as much.
Right.
And so we're very used to, budgeting out capex and, having to do a lot of repairs on the plumbing and stuff like that. So we feel more comfortable on the older
You,
vintage than most
I feel like
others.
owners are a little spoiled here in the Southeast, right? They're a little snobby, not spoiled, like snobby, where they see a 70s and there's so much supply that was built in the Southeast and in the Sunbelt markets where they're like, no, I don't want a 70s deal. There's like, that's commodity product.
Yeah.
And when you're from LA, you're from SoCal, it's a little bit more supply constrained. You're more comfortable. You have to kind of buy the 60s to 70s if you want to be in a good area.
Yeah, also size.
Yeah.
Like in California, you'll rarely find a 200 unit property,
Right.
right? Most units are like under 50, right? And
Yeah.
that's where a lot of the juice is, honestly. But over here, everybody is trying to go, 100 plus units and trying to get that operational efficiency and trying to really go bigger,
Yep.
which I completely understand. It's just I'm trying to replicate that and it doesn't really exist in California.
Yeah, it
So,
doesn't. Yeah, that's true. What are kind of the reasons, the key drivers that made you kind of diversify out of, you know, LA and Pasadena? And what markets in particular are you really focused on diving into?
Yeah, so I'll answer that kind of backwards.
Sure.
We're going into basically Sunbelt and Southeast. We're looking a little bit into the Midwest as well. But I
It's
think
hot right now.
it's exactly, we were kind of priced out a little bit. We looked into Columbus,
Yeah.
but then, it's the only place in the country that has like rent growth. And so
Do you think we're too late there if you wanted to dive in today? You think the ship's already sailed?
I wouldn't feel comfortable diving in today.
Yeah, with where you're seeing yields at
Yeah, I
there?
think there's just
I
better
kind of agree with that.
opportunity
Yeah.
with patient capital. If
Right.
if you have patient capital, I think there's better opportunity in either the distress world or even the lending world,
Yep.
buying notes in the Sun Belt and the Southeast.
Sure.
Because historically those have been like high growth markets, right?
Mhm.
And even though we had supply pressures, one day hopefully it does come back,
Yeah.
right? Um, as to why we're trying to diversify out, it's like a few reasons. I think one is obviously the local regulations, right? California is very democratic. It's not the most landlord friendly. Um,
Not at all.
not at all, yeah. But at the same time, is we also have, in my opinion, too much in that one area, right?
Right.
So
You need
like,
to diversify geographically.
yeah,
Yep.
we own about 40 buildings just kind of between, say, upwards of like Reseda, so like the San Fernando Valley,
Hmm.
or it's like Orange County, Inland Empire area.
Yep.
And so that's a lot of buildings kind of in that one concentrated area. And so, from a strategic move for us, we also want to try to diversify out and not necessarily sell buildings because we really like our portfolio over there, but at least fresh capital coming out, we want to try to go to other markets.
And by the way, that's exactly what we went through, right? Like Tryon Properties, we cut our teeth buying rent control, multifamily buildings, 60s, 70s vintage in SoCal. Then we went up to NorCal to diversify different parts of California. Then we broke into the Pac Northwest in Portland. We were one of the most prolific buyers at the time, like 2015 to 2018, 2019, in terms of transaction volume. And then when there was all this chatter of repealing Costa Hawkins,
Yeah.
and there was rent control that passed in Oregon. We're
Yeah.
like, man, we gotta diversify.
Yeah.
We gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that we needed to just fire sale everything
Mhm.
in SoCal, but we needed to diversify geographically. And I think every market has their own risk, right? You got to pick your poison.
Right.
And I think in the Southeast, you're probably seeing with the supply, you have different poison there. Insurance, you have different poison, but you have a lot of demand drivers, a lot of benefits. You see, even in South Florida and Miami, you see the vibrancy here. You get it. Once
Yeah.
you're here, you get it.
Yeah.
So
The traffic shows the demand.
the traffic shows the demand. Yes. Yes. For better or for worse. Talking a little bit about your strategy, what are specific submarkets that you really like right now that you want to buy in the Southeast and Sunbelt?
So I like the Carolinas.
Mhm.
I like Florida. I really like Texas still. Kind of Dallas, Houston. Obviously, the issue right now is that those markets have great fundamentals, but deals aren't necessarily penciling.
Right.
And the reason is because, at least in my opinion, is because rent growth isn't evident yet,
Mhm.
right? And so, I think rates is a factor, but it's not like the major factor. I think in order for transaction volume to like really increase, either there needs to be like a pricing adjustment, so sellers need to meet the market, or rent growth needs to be evident for buyers to build that conviction and then go really aggressive into the market, right? And so for us, I think at those markets that are already institutionalized, value add is really, really tough without rent growth,
Yep.
right? Because, 30 years ago, washer and dryers were the single, most popular amenity in a unit that you could
Yep.
get $150 for sure, right? And added a lot of value. But then when the institutions came, that's gone, right?
Yeah.
Like all buildings in the 80s, 90s vintage, even 70s vintage have those washer and
This
dryers,
is
right?
the lowest ROI market I've ever seen in
Yeah.
terms of renovations and sort of adding washer dryers. Like, man, the ROIs are not there, and
Yeah.
I haven't seen it like this since like when I first joined. Right, so
Just at the conference, people were talking about like tech packages. So like a thermostat where you can like, shut it off via like the
yep,
phone. And people are talking about those as amenities. And you just compare that to like a washer and dryer and it's like day and night,
yeah, of course,
And so like you're not really getting the return on investment from your kind of value add and capex spend,
yeah.
right? Which is an issue, right? Which is why like deals can't pencil, right?
Now the bet is you still do the work and you hope you can get that ROI when things rebound.
Yeah.
Right? Is buy a deal, capitalize for it. Hey, maybe the ROI isn't there today, but if you're budgeting for it and the deal still makes sense without the ROI, then it'll be gravy and it'll be upside when the market does rebound and you get ROI
Yeah,
from that.
yeah. I guess from our family's perspective, we're not necessarily trying to hit the home run, right? Trying
Right.
to be the first in the herd and like, lead kind of the pack on buying the lowest price and timing the bottom. We more like to feel, okay, rent growth is coming. We kind of feel it. And then, we might hit a double,
Yep.
right? Or we might hit a triple, right? We don't want to be the first in to hit the home run.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's start Carolinas for a little bit. What are like some specific markets in Carolinas that kind of piqued your interest? And by the way, have you bought anything yet, or you're just kind of you're
No.
starting right now? Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in the
we're
first inning of kind of getting in. The first one's always the hardest,
the
but
first
yeah,
one is always the
you got to
hardest.
underwrite a
Yeah.
thousand deals before you buy one.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
name of the game. Yeah,
Well, I think we gotta do market discovery first,
right.
right? And
Yep.
so started looking in the primary markets, right? You're like Charlotte, for
Yep.
example, Raleigh, for example, right? And then realized those were institutionalized, right?
Yeah.
It's way
Big
too
time.
hard to buy a value add deal
And a
without
lot
rent
of
growth.
supply. And a
A
lot
lot
of
of supply,
supply.
exactly.
And you're just like, okay, as a value add guy, how are you going to underwrite upside in rents when your rent pro forma is the same as a new construction building a mile
Exactly,
down? It's tough.
exactly.
It's tough on those markets.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
so we started looking into secondary markets, right?
Yep.
So Wilmington, Greensboro,
Nice.
Winston-Salem, right? And
Great.
even those areas, I feel like it's still hard,
Yeah.
right? So then we started looking into creative strategies, right? So we're right now looking into like affordable place, right?
Hmm.
So like affordable place in those
Nonprofit partnerships.
nonprofit
Yep.
partnerships like Lura's, for
Yep.
example, right? And getting those in those secondary or even tertiary markets, right?
Yep.
Where we're looking into Newport and then Lancaster as well, right? So really trying to be creative. I think in this tough market today, like if you don't have the conviction to go aggressive, you need to be creative, and
Yeah.
that's the only way you can get deals done.
Yeah. And I think what's good, like the Greensboros, Wilmingtons, things like that, you're getting good, you could get good vintage and good yield at the
Mhm.
same time,
Yeah,
right? And you just have to be super sharp on what the demand drivers are and know your micro pockets because separate from those primary MSAs, the secondary ones, they can really boom or bust if
yeah.
like one of those demand drivers doesn't work out.
Exactly, exactly. So demographics is key,
Yeah.
right? And really trying to like you said, really trying to understand what is driving the demand in that market and what's the probability that that demand is gone.
And then you were saying Texas. I mean, you know what the common thing with like Carolinas, Texas, Florida, some of the strongest inbound migration during the ZERP era, and then some of the highest supply markets because there's low barriers to entry
Yeah.
on the building side. And so, how are you getting comfortable with supply today in some of these markets, like a Texas? And I'm assuming like Texas, you're looking primary. You're talking like primary, like
Dallas,
Dallas. Yep,
Houston,
yep,
yeah. It's hard, right?
yeah,
Because like you said, class A rents are getting closer and closer to B. Some are at B, and then B rents are like SC. And so it's really hard to get things to pencil,
yep,
right? But then at the same time, there is distress in the market as well, right? People went very aggressive into Dallas and Houston, more so in Houston. And then because of that, how aggressive they went, a lot of things are kind of in the lender's hands, even though no one really wants to admit it, right?
Yeah.
And lenders don't want to let it go.
People are underwater. It
People
is
are
what it
underwater,
is. Yeah.
exactly. It's like it's impossible to not be underwater when you go
Right.
that aggressive, right?
Yeah.
And so we're kind of staying patient and just keeping our eyes on the lenders and on those specific properties that have a possibility of going back, and then trying to kind of take advantage of those.
Let's go back to our hometown for a sec. Let's go back to LA. Would you still invest in LA today?
I would, depending on the type of asset,
Right.
right? And so, um, RSO buildings, probably not.
Mhm.
But there are some like brand new construction that are vacant, right? So we're looking at I think it's like a 30 unit deal, brand new construction that is trying to trade for around 300 to 350 a door, right? And
Below
it's
replacement
way
costs?
below replacement costs, right? And so the idea there is basically we know there's demand in LA, right?
Yep.
And so we can lease that up much faster than we can if it was in like Miami,
Yeah.
right? And so we're very happy to buy those kind of buildings and then do a lease up and then either refinance afterwards. We can do like probably a cash buy and then a refinance afterwards, or we hold on to the build. We refinance and hold on to the building,
Yep.
right? And so I think there's still unique opportunities in LA, and kind of given our relationship and our like locality, I guess, in the market, we see like some of those opportunities pop up. And so I wouldn't necessarily like just completely rule LA out.
Yep.
I think we just got to be cherry picking the deals.
Yeah. And I feel like you're looking at it in a good lens where RSO is a type of risk that is hard to quantify, right?
100%.
You can't quantify the rules changing and the rug just getting swooped under you.
Yeah.
So by buying something new where it's not rent controlled, you're removing that side of the equation that makes it tough for people to invest in LA, and you're still getting the benefit of the demand. And yes, it's vacant today, but there's demand on the back end that eventually, when supply is absorbed and you put the right management and you market it the right way, you'll lease it up and you'll get it to where it needs to be.
100%.
Yeah. So I guess let's move on from some of these markets. I love talking. I mean, we could talk about markets
We
for a long
should,
time. We
Yeah,
really
yeah,
we
yeah.
really
'Cause
should.
you're really deep into the markets. You
Yeah.
run acquisitions, and I'm trying to learn about the markets outside of California. So it's always really great talking to you
No,
about
and
markets.
I'll just kind of, we have exposure to West and East Coast, right?
Yeah,
Not as much LA, but we're chasing a lot in the Bay Area right now, and we are chasing RSO buildings in the city of San Francisco. We are chasing garden style product in the East Bay, and we cut our teeth, you know, doing those renovations, value adds. There's something to be said about supply constrained markets.
yeah,
There's something to be said about supply constrained markets where you can rely on the demand and you can rely on that unit getting leased out, and you don't have to be getting, the life sucked out of you from concessions and
right.
and just sluggish operations. And then we're also in Colorado where it's almost like the worst of both worlds right now. You're getting the liberal tenant activist like bullshit,
Yeah,
and then you also have a flood of supply.
yeah,
And so then you come into the Southeast and you see there's a lot of growth, a lot of people moving here, cost of living. We look at rents in relation to incomes,
right,
and the rents in relation to incomes here are incredible
right.
for most of these markets. Miami may be a little tighter, but there's a lot of runway for
Right.
rent growth for that reason once supply is absorbed. So I think quantifying risk is super important.
Yeah.
And I think just being able to do that in, markets like the Southeast go a long way.
So which markets would you invest in right now?
I like in the Southeast, I like Atlanta a lot. I
Okay.
like out of favor market like Atlanta. It's been redlined and red taped by a lot of institutions
Mhm.
because they got burned. They got burned
Because of the
coming.
evictions, was it?
Yeah, so there was a lot of fraud in
Right, right, right,
Atlanta.
right.
But what you're finding is there's fraud everywhere
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, it's not just Atlanta. Atlanta just got hit with it first, and what followed were a backlog of evictions in all
Right,
these counties
right,
where it wasn't that they were restricting evictions. They didn't have enough people to process evictions, to process the writs,
right.
to have sheriffs perform set outs. But what I like about Atlanta, unlike some other states, or other cities is they actually passed laws, and Georgia passed laws, and Atlanta followed and passed laws that gave landlords the tools to process the evictions. Instead of having on duty sheriffs perform set outs, you can hire and pay a little extra for an off duty sheriff to perform the set out.
Mhm.
So something that used to take months now can take weeks.
So they're actually helping you guys.
Exactly. And I think there's something to be said there
Yeah.
of like investing in a market where, yes, it went through a bloodbath on operations, but now they've given the tools for operators to succeed. Some are taking advantage, some are still stuck in the mud. Thankfully, we're taking advantage of it. And so I like that. I like that market. I also we have a great team there. Shout out to our property management team in Atlanta. They're amazing. And I think that's an edge for us. So that's one
100%.
specific. And then West Coast, we love the Bay Area right
Mhm.
now. I mean, the tailwinds there
Yeah.
are incredible. The AI growth, the return to office,
The new mayor.
the new mayor, Daniel Laurie. Wow. Like I'm like his number one fan at this point. I
Yeah.
always just retweet him, repost him. I love him. So I think it's just like an incredible growth trajectory that the city is going through, the East Bay, which, we bought a lot in the East Bay pre-pandemic, and we love that thesis. We love that play. And we're returning back to that today.
100%.
So two different sides of the country, and two different strategies, but both good in their own reason.
I was at ULI in early November in San Francisco, and you can just feel the vibe shift. All the developers were really on board, right? And a few years ago, that was not the case,
Yeah.
right? Everybody was like, "Oh, San Francisco is going to be a dead zone," and all of that. And now everybody
So
is
crazy.
on board,
Yeah.
right? And developers were really excited, right? And retail people were really excited, and so you can just see the shift. And I think, you know, with or without AI, kind of that that market is gonna grow.
Yeah.
It's one of the best markets in the country.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And it's crazy to see the shift change so quickly.
yeah,
Right. And that's why I asked you like about LA, and you still have conviction in LA, and you're approaching in the right way with looking at new buildings and trying to de-risk at least some part of the
right.
equation. But I see LA kind of having its own renaissance at some point too.
Yeah.
For us, it's probably tough right now, but maybe if it's a deal like that, it makes sense.
We just need 2028 Olympics to make some magic.
Everyone's banking on 2028 Olympics. It's hilarious. Everyone is just praying to God. 2028 Olympics is when everything's just going to change.
Well, I think there's got to be some improvements in terms
Yeah.
of like the quality of living in the area. But at the same time, like it's already, I guess, 2020, almost 2026, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, we'll see how far we can stretch that.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. So PARES AI, I want you to tell us a little bit about it. It's an exciting project. You're kind enough to give me a little bit of a pilot on, and waiting for the full launch to come. So stay tuned, everyone. Tell us a little bit about PARES AI.
Yeah, so PARES AI is an AI-enabled multifamily underwriting software. So if you think about traditional workflows of underwriting, right, you get the rent roll, the T12, the OM from the broker, right?
Yep.
And it could be literally any format, right? It could be the Yardi kind of rent roll where all the lease charges are in a column, or it could be like a PDF, right? And acquisition people have to go through the process of parsing that, and then they have to go through finding rent and sale comps. And then depending on whether you're institutional or smaller, you have to find like demographics data, news data, and then you have to put everything into your model and then adjust assumptions and go from there. So PARES streamlines the entire process in under 10 minutes. And so you put the rent roll, the T12, the OM into the software, and we automatically do the parsing. We find demographics data, we find news data, we find rent comps, sale comps, and then we also screen them as pass fail based on preset criterias. And so what we're really doing is taking a process that might take like 30 minutes and shrinking that down to I would consider under 10, because when you put it in, it takes 10 minutes, but you can actually go do something else. And so that's really the beauty of it.
You're really buying back your time in that regard.
Exactly.
Yep.
I would say it's more than just time. It's also like an emotional aspect, which is how I actually, wanted to build this.
Yeah. What do you mean by that?
So when I was underwriting deals, I have inherently like this excitement whenever I close a deal that I underwrote, right?
Yeah.
And then when the market turned, I wasn't closing anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I was underwriting so much and not closing much. And so there was inherently this deal fatigue and emotional barrier, right? And so I just for a while didn't really want to underwrite anymore, right? Because I just knew that it wasn't gonna work,
And
right?
it's not just you. I think everyone's kind of felt that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just seeing the assets, seeing the location, seeing who's marketing it, and it basically tells me that this may or may like probably won't work, right?
Yeah.
And so I just feel like I don't want to go through the process of, preparing my entire Excel model, right? Because
Right.
that takes some time,
Yeah.
and just after doing that, realizing that this deal isn't going to work out, right?
Right.
And then doing that over and over and over again. And at one point, we were doing that process like 5 times a day, right? Because we were underwriting 5 deals a day,
Yeah.
right? And so I didn't want to do that, and so I built this thing where I can basically wake up every morning, right? And then I put my stuff into PARES, put the 5 deals into PARES, and then I go like take a lap around the tennis court or do something else, and then come back, and then it'll basically tell me whether it passed or not, right?
Yeah.
And then
Wow.
I only look at the deals that pass, right? And the good thing is, depending on how much you trust the AI and stuff, you can set loose or tight criterias, right? And so, we can do it just based on like basis, or we can do it just based on kind of demographics data, or we can go even deeper and, try to have it analyze like cap rates and, certain return on cost and stuff like that. And so it's really flexible. It's customizable. People use their own Excel models, right? So they're not forced into a specific Excel model,
Yeah.
right? Everything is customizable to the user. And I think it saves a lot of time, but also it just motivates me to actually do work now.
Yeah. And now that you're explaining it, and I was asking you, like, talk to me a little about the emotional aspect. I also feel like sometimes you're underwriting a deal, and depending on how you feel about the market or that day, you might want to lean in or be more conservative. And by having a systemized process where it kind of does the first screen for you, it takes that out and it's
Yeah.
apples as apples as it get. Even if you think your underwriting is apples to apples, you may put an assumption that's a little more conservative one day and a little more aggressive another day because you looked at your own P&L of your own portfolio and you're like, shit, maybe I need to be more conservative, or, oh, wow, I can definitely start leaning in.
Yeah.
So this kind of makes it a level playing field.
We actually have a kind of a preliminary due diligence feature as well,
Yeah.
where we diligence the rent roll and the T12 and then compare it to kind of other assets you've underwritten in the past,
Yeah.
right? And so, repairs and maintenance for properties in this specific area with vintages, plus minus 10 years, like this is the deals that you have underwritten in the past, and this is how you should be underwriting today. And so it's trying to, make an art with like underwriting the art as much of a science as possible. And then at the same time, I think organization is really, really important. Our system, it's kind of like it's like a steel CRM, right? So
Yeah.
it tracks the different stages of deals that you've underwritten, right? And so by going through that, it forces you to be more organized, and which ultimately benefits you in the long run, right? As you underwrite more deals, but then also as you do like a year in review, right? At the end of the year, and you look back at what you looked at and how the market is. It's not just a gut feeling, right? It's a data backed kind of investment thesis or assumption.
Yeah. And I feel like in an era with AI where there's an abundance of knowledge out there. You almost have to, as an operator, create your own data and
Right,
synthesize your own data to have a real edge.
right,
You can't just buy an off the shelf data from CoStar, rely on that and say, oh, I'm going to have an edge in this market.
right,
And so by doing, Paris AI, having Paris AI synthesize all your data, all your underwritings, and be able to make key investment decisions
right.
by having all of that all on one platform is super powerful.
100%.
Yeah.
We're trying to enable acquisition teams to be more efficient, but at the same time be smarter, right? And that's really the key difference, right? Efficiency is just kind of automating workflows, but really, how can I make an acquisition person think better or think smarter about a certain deal? That's what we're really trying to go for. And I think that's really the power of AI today.
Where do you see this application getting grown to down the line? Where do you see Perry CI being 10 years from now?
I think it's going to get more and more powerful, right? Right now, we're doing the underwriting automation, and then a little bit of the preliminary due diligence. And so we're doing like rent roll audits, right? We're doing T12 trends and outliers, right? Lease trade outs, right? Searching through the OM against a series of due diligence questions, right? But I think as models get better and better, we would be able to go deeper and deeper into the due diligence cycle, right?
Yep.
So we're looking into potentially like utility audits, right? We're looking into reading like lease agreements to see if it matches the rent roll and doing that in a time efficient manner. And so eventually the goal is basically to automate underwriting and due diligence, right? Right now it's kind of underwriting and preliminary due diligence, right? You can definitely learn a lot more about the property on the first pass than you would without PARES,
Yeah.
right? But really the goal is to go full cycle and full stack.
Yeah. I think having automation for some of these like intense due diligence line items, like much needed, much needed. The lease audits, the utility audits, you can't just do that by hand anymore.
Yeah, it's even if you like it's also a good double check,
Yeah.
right? It's like you throw in the leases and you obviously you want to read it yourself if it's really important deal, but having a double check, right? And knowing that you're either right or wrong, right? It's really just it makes you feel better knowing that you
Yeah.
did the due diligence with an AI helper.
Yeah. Amazing. So how much of this do you attribute to your experience in real estate? And how much do you attribute for dropping out of MIT and saying, "All right, this is the MIT in me that's starting this
Yeah, I
this
think
up."
real estate really was the root, like, spark
Yeah,
of the idea, right? Like, without real estate, I don't think I would do, like, a prop tech
of
startup.
course. Yeah,
Dropping out of MIT is just I got too excited, right?
yeah,
It's just, like, I feel like, in school, I can spend time better than sitting in classes and, like, doing P sets and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
And so, that excitement was kind of what made me make the move, right? But at the same time, I think real estate is really key, right? Like understanding the actual workflows of an analyst or an associate or an acquisitions person is really, really important into building a product. Because if you don't understand that workflow, you don't truly understand the pain points,
yep.
right? Somebody can explain it to you in like a customer interview, but without going through it, you don't know how painful a certain pain point is and whether to prioritize a certain feature over another or not.
We're entering a time in real estate where you're either an adopter or you're just going to get left in the dust and left behind. And
Yeah.
I think trying to embrace these type of tools and being able to adapt accordingly and not be stuck in the mud working on a long PowerPoint presentation or not being stuck in the mud underwriting a portfolio of 50 buildings.
Mhm.
Being able to automate these items is really what's going to get you the edge and have the time and have the discipline to be competitive in the next cycle.
100%. I think if you don't use the tools that you're given, right? And these are very advanced tools, right? If you don't take advantage, you're gonna be too late, right?
Yeah.
I think eventually people will realize that, right? And they will take advantage of it, but then that's already maybe 2 years behind everybody else who took advantage of it before.
Yep. So are you coding these yourself or yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's
Amazing.
tough.
Has it gotten easier though with AI? I know everyone, I'm not in the coding field, but I hear, a coder can get replaced pretty soon. So
I think AI can be good at like a demo or like an MVP, like a mock-up kind of
yep.
thing. But truly like, enterprise grade software, it's still you need like a human to do it, right?
Yeah. I think end to end, you still need human end to end,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think building something that, can have a lot of users on it, can have users trust it, right? Without, a lot of bugs, really considered like a usable product. I think humans have to be in the loop, right?
Yep.
I think AI is really good at planning for you, right? If you have an issue and you want to talk to AI about it, right? And then AI give you a plan on how to implement it, that's great, right? That's amazing. AI is great at doing that, but the foundational models are inherently probabilistic models, right? So if you just tell it to do certain stuff, it takes the path of least resistance and the path of like highest probability, right? Which sometimes when it just codes you a page, right, you don't really go through the entire page,
Yeah.
right? You just kind of, oh yeah, it kind of works, right?
Yeah.
And then you just kind of leave it there. which can actually be very harmful later on when you need to fix
Compounding
something.
mix, yeah,
Exactly.
compounding
Yeah, I
errors.
mean, I think, technical debt isn't something I'm like too worried about at the early stage, but I think very severe technical debt will affect user experience, and that ultimately is it will kill a startup
Yeah.
basically.
So how does it feel shifting from traditional real estate to now more entrepreneurial, starting this, Paris AI?
It's is 100% different,
Yeah.
right? And startup is about experimenting and trying to find out, really discover what products and what features have product market fit, right?
Hmm.
Or is willing like the market's willing to accept, right? Acquisitions and real estate in general is about doing standardized and repeatable processes and trying to hit like, doubles and triples. And so it's a totally different process.
De-risking for, you know, asymmetric return by de-risking the property and getting that mid-teens return. And then in entrepreneurship and startup, you're trying to hit the home run, you're trying to experiment, you're trying to be bold. It's very different. Yeah.
Yeah, when I first started Perry's AI and to now, like I actually had a mindset shift on the startup landscape,
Yeah.
right? And when I first started, I was more in the idea of like, we should go do something that clearly has demand, right? And so and the result of that is high competition, right? You're
Yep.
basically in a bloodbath and you don't know if you're gonna win. Everybody's product looks very, 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 very similar. And so that was kind of the mindset starting out, right? And but then now I'm kind of shifting, right? I want to do something that's like different, right? That it's kind of still in underwriting, but taking it from a different angle and a different approach, right? And it's basically taking a bet on whether that approach is correct or not, right? And if it's correct, then it obviously takes off. If it's wrong, then obviously we have to pivot, right? But this approach at least makes me feel that I'm not in a bloodbath, right?
Yeah.
I'm in more of a blue ocean situation, right? And it's more taking a bet and seeing if it's a home run or we just have to pivot.
Yeah. Well, it's exciting. Love the demo, love seeing what you're creating. I'm excited to see the full launch and love seeing what Paris AI is going to grow into.
Yeah.
And Zihao, it's great having you on. I know you have a flight to catch, right?
Yeah, I gotta, head up to New York and then go to back to LA next week.
Oh wow! So you're not going back. You're gonna keep the trip going.
I try to bundle New York and Florida together, but then I, try to be as efficient as possible
They're
as
not as
well.
close as you think.
3 hours apart, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
right? 3
yeah,
hours flight. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. But both on this side of the country, I
yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Well, it was great having you on. Thanks again for coming in, and looking forward to make some deals happen.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It was
of
really
course.
fun.